Hello, and welcome to episode number 13 of WrestleRotica. This week's episode features only one story this time, and this story stars Tylene Buck, a pizza delivery company, and a frat of college students. Please enjoy this week's story. And without further ado, let's get to the story. This story is called Order for Buck, and it is written by B-Boy68. Tylene Buck wasn't happy with the way her life had panned out recently. She'd been living the high life as the center of Vince Russo's TNA era in WCW these last couple of years. Week after week, she would get paid to parade around, wearing as little as possible, knowing that men all over the world were jacking off, dreaming about what they'd do to her hot body. Tylene had loved it, and it really had been a life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But now, since being fired as part of the major cost-cutting exercise intended to save the company, she'd been at a loss as to what to do. She'd contacted the Vince McMahon to ask for a job in either the WWF or the new WCW, and she'd gotten some positive feedback. However, they couldn't decide anything until the situation with WCW was sorted out, and that could take months. She figured that was fair enough, but it's not like she was incredibly high paid, and she'd have to find some way to make money in the meantime. Her first instinct had been to go back to fitness modeling, but in her absence, new stars had emerged on the scene, and Tylene just wasn't in demand anymore. Aww. Movies were another option, but she couldn't get roles in any serious films. They didn't want people associated with that second-class business. Of course, the porn industry was a different matter. They were practically bending over backwards to get her in some low-budget fuckfest, but wrestling was her first love, and she knew she'd never get a job with the WWFE if she resorted to porn. It wasn't that she didn't enjoy having sex, she loved it, but if it turned out the WWF didn't want her services, she knew she'd give porn a shot. The sex was probably what she missed the most from her WCW days. When 90% of the staff are male, and the business requires long hours away from home, what's a nympho to do? She'd fucked her way around the entire dressing room and some of the front office members. Hell, it was how she avoided the cost-cutting acts for so long. It was quite the catch-22 situation. Her first two loves were wrestling and fucking. She couldn't fuck for a living if she wanted to wrestle, and she wouldn't know if she could wrestle again for an indeterminable amount of time. This meant filling up her bank account with other jobs until something was sorted out. Tylene kept her ears to the ground and decided to base herself in Minnesota while waiting for word from the WWF. They had a decent amateur wrestling scene, and the head coach at the university was close friends with Gerald Briscoe. She figured that the only place better for the inside track on the new WCW would be either Atlanta or Hartford, but she didn't want to look overly eager. With the little money she had saved up, she rented an apartment, and after quitting several other minimum wage, menial jobs because she got recognized, ended up delivering pizza. Pizza time! She didn't like it very much. The hours were shit, the tips were usually horrible, and the weather wasn't exactly California, but cash was cash, and she figured that it was only temporarily anyway. Plus, with this job, she didn't have to interact with other people too much. Being recognized was a pain. She was always polite and smiling, but barmaids and waitresses and the like don't want to get stuck talking to the same guys all the time. More customers equals more tips. She was the first to admit she enjoyed the male attention, and it wasn't like she hadn't fucked some of them, but she was desperate to stay focused on getting back into the wrestling big time. Delivering pizza meant she had a uniform, including a hat to cover her face, and customer interaction was minimal. Here's your pizza, here's your money, thank you, goodbye. On one particularly Saturday night, in the midst of a harsh winter in late February, Tylene was just about to knock off for the night when one order came through. 2 fucking minutes before the cutoff time. All the other deliverers had gone home, so Tylene was stuck with traipsing over to one of the university's frat houses to deliver a pizza to some drunk and stoned students who had a late night attack of the munchies. Shit, Tylene, have you seen the weather out there? Asked the chef, who was just as pissed off at the late order as she was. Tylene turned and glanced out the window. The storm had gotten worse in the 10 minutes she'd been inside. The winds were gusting really strongly now, and the rain and the wind must have combined to knock the already cold Minnesota air down another 20 degrees. Shit! Tylene muttered as the chef put the pizza into the box and began chopping some onions for tomorrow. Since this is the last call order, don't bother coming back tonight. You can settle up tomorrow. I'll clear it with the boss, the chef said to Tylene's back as he checked out her tight little ass through her dark blue polyester trousers. Thanks, Frank. And you might want to keep your eyes on where that knife is, rather than my butt, Tylene replied without turning around. Damn, girl, how'd you do that? Frank asked. Reflection. Tyleen turned, smirked, and pointed at the window. Frank just smiled back as she turned and walked past him, her shapely hips swaying as she did so. She picked up the pizza and the address on the way to her car, parked out back. Once Tyleen had managed to open the back door, against the wall of wind on the other side, she started for her car. Struggling to keep on her feet against the wind, she made it about halfway across the parking lot before her cheap blue baseball cap was whisked off her head and landed in a puddle some 20 feet away. Shit! Tyleen exclaimed, her long blonde hair now flailing in all directions. She decided to give the hat up as bad job. A bit of cleavage or thigh to the manager would get her a replacement with no charge. Finally, making it to her car, Tyleen cursed her luck this late evening and sped off to the address she'd been given. She pulled up to the frat house and saw that despite the late hour, whatever party they'd been throwing was still going on, although it was obviously winding down. The music wasn't so loud and there didn't seem to be hundreds of people in the front room. The storm was as strong as ever and Tyleen almost lost her balance a couple of times on the walk up the drive. Finally, her slender frame succumbed to the bashing from the elements, and she slipped onto the lawn to the side of the path. The good news was the pizza was unscathed.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
But the bad news was that she was plastered from head to toe in mud. Fuck! Tyleen shouted out at no one in particular. She stood up and looked down at herself. 20 minutes ago she'd been planning to go to bed and maybe a quick frig to help send her off to sleep. It had been a week or so since she'd been fucked good and hard. But instead, she was standing in the front yard of a frat house, covered in filth. She decided to just deliver the pizza and go home as quickly as possible. She continued to struggle against the wind for the remainder of the trip up the drive. A handsome young man with black hair, who Tyleen guessed was about 21 and 6 foot tall, answered her knock on the door mercifully quick. The guy just stood there open mouthed. Before him stood the woman, who looked like she'd been dragged through a hedge backwards. Despite the mud, he could see she had a sexy face. The rain and mud had caused her cheap-looking uniform blouse to stick close to her skin, highlighting her incredible curves. Like most frat boys, the only thing on Tom's mind was fucking.
Fucking it, sucking it, touching, fucking it, sucking it, touching.
And what he wouldn't give to fuck this woman stood before him right now. He felt a stirring in his pants, and his cock started to grow as he began to mentally undress the pizza delivery girl. If you're not going to invite me in for a moment out of the rain, then at least be quick with the payment, Tyleen snapped. She noticed his ogling and was quite flattered, but was in no mood to be messed around. Oh, I'm sorry. Please, come in for a moment, the lad said. Mark! Pizza's here! He shouted up the stairs. Steve backed up and Tyleen followed him in. She noticed his bulging crotch and guessed he must have been pretty well hung. Coming, Tom! She heard from the top of the stairs. Another lad came, bounding down the stairs with cash in hand. He also had black hair, appeared slightly taller than Tom, but marginally less muscular. Tyleen glanced around and it sounded like there were a few people in the room next door, but the door was closed. She was struck with how good looking these two were. And if they were anything to go by, she must have wandered into a frat house for male models.
Turns out, just hunks.
Whoa! The guy coming down the stairs, Mark, Tyleen guessed, said. Why haven't we used this pizza company before?
Call Domino's Pizza and avoid the noise.
Mark stopped at the bottom of the stairs and began gazing at Tyleen's incredible body. Tyleen could tell both were slightly drunk, but this usually made men more confident and always more amusing. She always appreciated flattery, and their playful attentions had started to take her mind off how pissed she was about the evening so far. How much? Asked Tom. My Mark just stood there aghast, dreaming about sucking on the big tits of the pizza delivery girl, whose nipples were clearly visible through her drenched shirt, his cock swelling at the thought. It's $12.50 altogether, Tyleen told the two excited frat boys, who she could see were very pleased to see her. Shit! Exclaimed Mark, slightly embarrassed by his prominent bulge. Haven't got enough for tip here. Be right back. He charged back up the stairs. Big party? Tyleen asked, giggling slightly at Mark's somewhat drunken, exaggerated running. Something like that, Tom muttered. Look, since you appear to be in need of cleaning up, why don't you use the bathroom while you wait for him? Thanks, said Tyleen. Where is it? Upstairs, first door on the right, replied Tom. I might be a few minutes. I want to get some of this crap off, Tyleen said, motioning down her body. Take as long as you want, Tom said, taking a nervous gulp. Tyleen handed him the pizza box, and the bulge in his pants twitched. Tyleen noticed and gave him a foxy smile. Tyleen entered the bathroom and realized there was no lock on door, just a sign on the outside that you had to change between vacant and occupied. She frowned at the lack of privacy, but switched it to occupied, and turned to look in the mirror. Her clothes were a mess. It would be tough to get them all cleaned up before her next shift tomorrow night. She washed her face and hands before removing her shirt and trousers. She figured she could try to get the worst of the mud off them now. As she lightly scrubbed her wet clothes, she looked at herself in the mirror. She'd always been very proud of her body. Her large, 36 double D tits were the things dreams were made of. and looked perfect in her white lace bra, while the matching thong panties left little to the imagination. She wondered what dirty thoughts Tom and Mark must have been having about her. She began daydreaming about fucking the two young studs she just met, and her bad mood disappeared completely. She even began to get a little turned on. Subconsciously, one of her hands drifted down to gently stroke flat, smooth belly with her fingernails. A hollering from just outside the door shattered her bliss. "Yeah, I'll be down in a minute! I gotta pee!" Before Tylene knew it, the door was swung open, and a guy barged in. Like Mark and Tom, he was around 6 feet tall, but blonde. He'd obviously not paid any attention to the sign outside the door, and clearly wasn't expecting anyone to be in the bathroom. As he already had his dick out, he stopped abruptly when he saw Tylene, his need to urinate forgotten, as he saw the athletic blonde stood wearing nothing but her underwear. The sight of the fit beauty got him instantly hard. "Whoa! I thought all the girls had gone home!" the lad said. Tylene's eyes widened with lust at the sight of the guy's massive tool. It must have been at least 11 inches long. She couldn't take her eyes off it, and her already semi-aroused state was cranked up another few notches. Steve noticed what she was looking at and smirked. "I don't believe we met. I'm Steve, and I, along with my cock, are very pleased to meet you." Tylene hadn't taken her eyes off the immense penis waving in front of her. Her lust overcame her, and she stepped forward. One of her hands gripped Steve's thick shaft and began to slowly pump it up and down. "I'm Tylene," she said, staring at Steve's meaty weapon while continuing to stroke it. "I brought the pizza." "Well, I must say, I like the service," Steve grinned, knowing most women couldn't resist him after getting a glimpse of the weapon in his pants. The sight of such a long, rock-hard cock was too much for Tylene. She hadn't had one so big for a very long time. Most wrestlers use steroids, so they weren't exactly up to much. She had to have this man. She had to feel his stiff dick pumping inside her and making her scream. She forgot all about anything else, and the slut in her came out. She knelt down, taking her gaze off Steve's impressive cock for just a moment, to glance into his eyes and direct a devilish smile at him. She put her head down, and to Steve's amazement, buried her face on his massive prick, taking all 11 inches in one movement. The bathroom door was still open, but the thought she might be seen turned Tylene on even more. "Fucking hell, girl!" Steve shouted as Tylene deep-throated him. Steve gripped the sides of Tylene's head, but didn't need to fuck her face as Tylene took the hit. She began to rapidly pump her head up and down the entire length of Steve's huge cock, pulling out so just the head was between her lips, and then quickly slamming her head down again so his entire shaft was embedded in her throat, her cute, tight ass wiggling as she pumped. Steve couldn't believe what was happening to him. He'd wandered into the bathroom, only to discover this large-breasted slut who was now sucking his sizable pole like no one had before. He could feel her tongue playing around his shaft, and knew this certainly wasn't the first cock this bitch had down her throat. I'm gonna come!" Steve announced after a couple of minutes of Tylene's frantic sucking. Tylene took Steve's shank most of the way out of her mouth, leaving only his purple helmet between her puckered lips. She tightly gripped the base of Steve's cock with one of her hands and began to rapidly pummel his thick root. Before long, Tylene felt Steve's cock begin to swell and looked forward to the creamy meal she was about to receive. "Ugh! Fuck yes!" shouted Steve as he unloaded into Tylene's expertly slutty mouth. His thick spunk flooded Tylene's windpipe, and she continued to swallow every last drop. Tylene had always loved the taste of cum, and Steve certainly had plenty for her. Throughout Steve's orgasm, she created an even tighter seal between her lips and his dick, and jerked her hands up and down his engorged cock stock. This caused Steve to shout louder, and he emptied an ocean of cum into Tylene's maw before staggering backwards, leaving a trail of stringy, thick cum between his fatiguing cock and Tylene's lips. Steve's shouting had alerted several other frat boys, who were by now jostling for a good view just outside the bathroom, some of who were frantically rubbing their excited cocks through their trousers. Tylene stood up and seductively licked all the remaining cum off her lips. Steve was speechless. He just received the best blowjob of his life from a woman he just met. Half naked in a bathroom, he stared at Tylene's curved body, her sexy, slutty face, her mountainous breast, her slender hips, and lithe, athletic legs. What caught his eyes most, though, was her crotch. The area was apparently quite damp, and the flimsy lace was sticking to her hot, eager twat. He could tell that the woman had only just begun to enjoy herself. Seeing the beautiful Tylene buck in all her glory was enough to get Steve hard again, almost instantly. Tylene glanced down at the stern of his huge portion and walked towards him. She began to caress his hard shaft with her soft hands and said, "Looks like you're ready to go again, big boy. Are you going to stand there gapping, or are you going to use it where you're meant to?" Tylene asked as she squeezed Steve's prick harder, eliciting a moan from the well-hung stud. Steve's shock-induced speechlessness hadn't affected some of the onlookers, as one said to her, "Hey slut, if you want a good fucking, come to me. I'm all man, baby. No way, I'm the hung one around here," called another. Now, boys. Tylene purred softly before full-scale arguments could begin. She'd had a devilish thought. "I'm sure there's enough of little me to go around, but having seen young Steven's more than generous package, I'm not sure if I could settle for anything less," she teased. The guys didn't need to be told twice. Tylene watched as every single one of them, including Mark and Tom, dropped their trousers and pants, exposing their rock-hard dicks. Tylene was astonished. Not a single one was less than 8 inches long, and her initial thought had been correct. This was a fraternity of male models. None were as big as Steve, but she wouldn't have turned any of them down. She could have enjoyed a good, long fuck session with any one of these hot, young studs, but could she really take on an entire frat house? Steve's paralysis broke, and he approached her from behind. Tylene let out a slight shriek of surprise as his hands began to maul her immense, ripe melons through her delicate bra. Tylene felt the considerable length of Steve's rigid cock pressed against her per ass. She just couldn't wait to feel him probing deep inside her. A few of the onlookers had come towards Tylene for a good grope. One was kissing her damp snatch through her panties, causing her to let out a low moan. Steve unclasped her bra and Tylene removed it. Almost straight away there were 2 guys, one of which she noticed was Tom, sucking on her rounded orbs. The guy lapping at her cunt ripped her thong down to her ankles, and Tylene stepped out of it. The same guy then began kissing at her pussy lips, causing Tylene to grab his head in her hands and grind her dripping cunt against his face. The guy reciprocated by pushing his tongue into her succulent hole. Steve was playing with her asshole with his fingers. It was a feeling Tylene had experienced from many men before, and she knew what it meant. Steve was intended to fuck her ass.
Yeah, I'm an ass man.
Tylene thought everyone was getting too carried away too quickly. The confines of the bathroom were no place to host a gangbang. Come on, guys. We don't want to get too excited this early. We've got all night. Why don't you take me somewhere more comfortable? Tylene purred as she gently but firmly broke away from the inquisitive hands scrutinizing her luscious body. Now, which way to the biggest bedroom? Tylene asked as she strode past all the gaping mouths in the bathroom's doorway. The bed was huge. She wasn't surprised to hear that Steve's was the king size. When the sorority girls found out about that rocket in his pants, I bet they were all over him. Tylene thought wickedly. Tylene walked into the room ahead of the horny throng. She headed directly for the bed, lay down, and started to rub herself down. She glanced up and figured that there were at least 30 guys ready and waiting to fuck her. Guys, I want to be fucked hard and fucked over. And over again. I want you to fuck my cunt, my ass, and my mouth. I want to be filled with cum and covered with cum. I want each and every one of you to fuck me until none of us can take anymore. I need all your big, meaty cocks inside me now. People were almost killed in this stampede to fuck the horny, big-titted, blonde slut. Tylene may have been willing to turn her body over to these enthusiastic young men, but there was one request she wanted to make. I want Steve in my cunt first. Sorry, boys. He's just so fucking big. I want him while I'm still able to think straight. Steve made his way through the crowd and laid down next to Tylene, his 11-inch cock standing proudly to attention. Tylene straddled him, placing her knees on the bed, either side of his frame before dropping down and impelling herself fully on his fleshy monster. Oh fuck! It's so fucking big! Tylene screamed. As her damp cunt was crammed with Steve's hefty meat, she started pounding up and down, slamming her pelvis down onto Steve's enormous shaft. Shit, Tylene! Gasped Steve. You're pretty tight for such a fucking slut. The other guys just stood and watched in awe as Tylene's huge, meaty tits bounced with each hard stroke. A couple of guys groped her heaving breasts and tried to suck on them. Oh yeah! Tylene panted. Suck my fucking tits! You like those big melons, don't you, boys? Steve began to move with her thrust and plowed his fat shank into her mercilessly. He'd already shot a mammoth load tonight and wasn't going to come again for quite a while. All the better for me, thought Tylene. Although, the excitement got to Tylene, and it wasn't long before she came. Oh god! Oh god! Fuck yes! Ugh! Ugh! Oh, Steve! Fuck! Oh! Ugh! Yes! 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 Tylene screeched. As her first orgasm hit her, some of the guys were getting so turned on, watching the blonde slut lied that dick like a pro, that they'd started jacking off, forgetting Tylene's appeal to be fucked senseless. What are you, fuck yes, doing? Ugh! Tylene managed to direct at the eager group through her orgasm. I said, oh, I want, your come. The guys playing with themselves obeyed immediately and spurted their goo over the blurred form of Tylene, bucking on Steve's cock. Tylene's first orgasm was subsiding, but it was obvious that another was building quickly. She leant forward to kiss Steve's forehead. Right, someone up my ass, another in my mouth. Oh god, I'm such a cum slut. I just want as much as I can get, Tylene demanded as she continued to hump Steve. Steve helped things along by grabbing her toned ass cheeks and holding them apart for a swifter invasion. Mark didn't consider himself one of those timid little boys and stepped up to kneel between Steve's legs behind Tylene. Holding his throbbing 9-inch cock in one hand, he guided it towards Tylene's puckered asshole, where he brutally rammed it in one stroke. Arrgh! Tylene cried out in what sounded like pain as the monstrous rod was packed into her ass. Mark didn't care. He was too excited about fucking Tylene until she was comatose. He was squatted behind her, with his cock buried to the hilt in her ass. He grabbed her hips and slammed his thick shaft in and out of her ass crack, perfectly in time with her and Steve. Oh fuck! I love it! Fuck me! Tylene was on the verge of coming again. Nearly every other guy was wanking now, all clamoring to spurt his cream over Tylene's supple form. She reached out with her hands and found cocks on either side to yank on. Her touch brought the men to climax quickly, and they aimed their jizz onto the sides of Tylene's tits. Tylene loved the hot, slimy film of cum on her body and demanded more of it. Guys were coming periodically now, each one drenching Tylene's sweaty figure in their seed. Ugh! Mark came and blasted his cream deep into Tylene's ass. After finishing, he rolled off her. She loved the feeling of cum sloshing around her bowels. She leant forward so her pendulous tits were in Steve's face, gripping onto the bedsheets, and had another screaming orgasm. Fuck! Yes! 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 Fuck me! I want your cum! Her orgasm had caused her pussy lips to clamp down on Steve's large prick, increasing the friction. Steve lifted his head up slightly and began to kiss and lick the breast pounding down on top of him. The pressure on his cock and the malice in his face sent him over the edge, and he filled Tylene's well-worked cunt with the blast of his jism. Steve pushed Tylene aside despite her protest not to stop and rolled off the bed. As Tylene lay on the bed covered in sweat and cum, the guys just stood around dumbstruck and stroking their cock. Tylene wasn't anywhere near finished for the night and decided that these guys were going to need turning on a little bit more if she was going to get full enjoyment out of the evening. You 8, in a circle now, Tylene ordered, pointing at the 8 guys nearest the front of the crowd. And have those big cocks ready. The 8 looked at each other before obeying tentatively and mounting the bed. They were on their knees around Tylene and wondering what the slut would do next. Tylene knelt in the center and demanded, "Now, I want to come shower. Start jerking." She grabbed 2 cocks on either side of her and started to pull them off. The guys began moaning at her expert touch, and the other 6 took the hint and started to quickly yank themselves off. The guy in her left hand didn't take long to explode, and he unleashed a tidal wave of cream after just a couple of minutes with a long groan. Tylene was taken by surprise, as the entire left side of her face was drenched in this thick seed. Oh yeah! That's the stuff, baby. Got any more for me? Tylene asked, as she continued tugging on the fading cock to squeeze every last drop from it. She used her tongue to lick as much jizz as she could off her face, but most was out of reach, and either stuck to her slutty face or dripped down onto the rest of her body. After milking all she could from the tool in her left hand, she let go and grabbed the cock of the next guy in the circle. Tylene couldn't wait to taste the creamy nectar from the remaining 7 men. The rest of you, warn me when you're going to come, because I want to swallow it all down. Tylene purred as she continued to pump the 2 cocks in her hands. Here it comes, slut! Shouted the guy in her right hand. Tylene opened her mouth and pointed the cock towards it. Her aim was slightly off, and the first spurt of semen hit her right eye. Fortunately for Tylene, the guy was a cum reservoir and had plenty to unload. She managed to catch most of the rest of his salty gush in her mouth and swallow it down like she hadn't eaten for a week. She gargled as her mouth overflowed with hot cum. I'm coming! I'm coming! Shouted one of the guys directly in front of her, and he too shot his creamy wad into Tylene's waiting throat. The vast amount of cum these 2 were feeding Tylene was too much for her, and while she tried in vain to drink it all, most drooled from her lips and down her chin before landing on her perky tits. Ugh! Tylene heard from behind her. One of the guys at her back had shot his load into her blonde hair. That was 4 down. 4 to go. Of course, while this circle jerk was taking place, most of those guys standing around were wanking furiously and looking to splurge all over Tylene's mammoth breast. The 4 remaining guys Tylene had singled out all came virtually in unison. "Drink it down, you fucking slut!" stated one as he unloaded his hot gooey cum into Tylene's eager mouth. "She fucking loves it, man!" cried one of the onlookers with his cock in hand. There was no way Tylene could possibly have swallowed all this cum. Guys were on all sides of her, and turning her head one way would have meant missing out on her favorite meal from another angle. She didn't really have too many complaints though, because at any one time her mouth was full of salty jizz. Those that couldn't discharge past her soft lips shot their wad into her face and hair. After all coming, the guys got off the bed and left Tylene laying bathed in their spunk. It was obvious she enjoyed her cum shower. It dripped off her face and congealed in her slutty blonde hair. "Now boys, are you going to fuck my brains out now? Or are you all going to keep standing around playing with your dicks?" Tylene asked as she began to massage the cum on her body into her luscious round tits with one hand and rapidly freeing her hot, dripping snatch with the other, moaning as she did so. One guy, who she hadn't seen yet, decided to give her a hand, literally. He climbed over her athletic figure and started to suck on her inviting tits, while 2 of his fingers slipped inside her warm, moist crack. Ah! Tylene whimpered as the guy started to frig her pussy faster. "Please, your entire hand," she begged. "Oh!" she announced as he complied. She felt a glob of semen splash her face and noticed that several of the guys were coming together, all drenching her with their hot, thick cream. She lay on her back and started humping downwards, rapidly fucking the hand inside her twat, desperate to get as much inside her as possible. "Oh, fucking hell yes!" Tylene was coming again. She arched her back, and her thrusting onto the hand became faster and more forceful. At times, the guy had half his forearm buried inside Tylene's excited cunt. With her mouth open and screaming, one guy knelt behind her head and took the opportunity to fill it with his cock. They had all seen how expertly she'd swallowed Steve's long prick in the bathroom, and he had no trouble cramming his cock down Tylene's throat. Muffling her scream of ecstasy was all Tylene could manage, as one guy fisted her warm, wet cunt, and another towered over her and brutally fucked her face. "Shit, girl! You've done this before!" exclaimed the stud in her mouth. Tylene had lost track of how many dicks she'd sucked, and she knew she was good at it. With every thrust of his cock, his ball slapped against her nose. "Yeah! Sucking, slut!" the guy panted, as Tylene rolled her tongue over the head of his cock with each fresh invasion. The other lad continued to pound his fist into her pussy, which was almost up to his elbow, causing waves of joy to wash over Tylene with each thrust. "Shit!" Tylene heard from a member of the onlooking throng. "She's taking his whole fucking arm." The guy down her throat pulled his dick out, aimed it at her face, and stared, jerking himself off. "Ugh!" he screamed as he climaxed. "Oh! In my mouth! Fuck yes!" Tylene was still coming, thanks to the fist up her cunt that didn't feel like it was stopping anytime soon, or even slowing down. "Fuck me faster! Yes! Harder! The guy tried to aim his jizz into Tylene's enthusiastic mouth, but she's screaming and bucking around too widely on the fist in her pussy to make it an easy shot, and most of his cum landed in her face and hair. The guy rolled off the bed, waiting for his erection to return so he could continue abusing this fair-haired slut. She continued thrashing around on the large bed as her intense orgasm continued. "Oh god, yes! Don't stop! Finally, the guy slamming his head into her soaking pussy relented as Tylene started to come down from her orgasm. All throughout this, her body was being covered with what seemed like gallons of sperm as new guys replaced those who had already shot their load. There was another lull in proceedings, but Tylene was still as horny as hell. She began to scoop up the cum on her body and lick it off her fingers as everyone else watched. She still wasn't satisfied.
Snickers satisfies.
She wanted all these young studs to not be able to keep their hands off her. She made a final, impassioned plea that she hoped would deprive them of their nervousness. "I said I wanted a good fucking tonight, guys," Tylene stated, as she licked more jizz off her fingers. "And I'm not anywhere near done. I'm all yours. Now fuck me! Drown me with your cum!" Finally, the guys got the message and ravished Tylene. She quickly had a huge dick in her ass, one in her cunt and another down her throat, receiving an excellent sucking. "Fucking slut! she heard from the one in her ass, but she didn't care. She loved being so easy. She got off at the mere thought of having several cocks inside her at once. She continued to jerk off a couple more at a time, while the others coated her with their jizz. Every time one came, he took a couple minutes to recuperate and came back for more. Tylene didn't get another break all night. She lost track of how many times she came, or how many guys she had inside her. At some point, the experience became a daze. She was only aware of the seemingly continuous orgasm. Later on, with all the guys still present by Tylene's count, she passed out from the pleasure. It was late Sunday morning when Tylene woke up. She was laying on the bed in the spoon position, with an obviously tiring college boy banging her sopping twat, and roughly playing with her large, juicy tits. She noticed a few bodies slumped in the corner, and a couple more trying out of the room. Tylene lay back and let the guy inside her finish. He came with a groan and collapsed beside her, falling asleep instantly. She ached all over, but her pussy, asshole and jaw, screamed in the greatest pain. Slowly, Tylene managed to stand up with a brittle, scrunching sound as she peeled herself off the drying, cum-stained bedsheets. She made it to the dresser unit in one corner of the room and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked like death warmed up. Her body was coated in a slimy film of cum, and her hair was matted together in clumps. She left the room and headed for the bathroom. The house was dead, barely a soul in sight, and those that were around were asleep on the floor with their limp dicks flopped out. She discovered her bra and panties were gone, almost certainly taken as a trophy by the boys. She leant over the sink completely naked, her toned, inviting ass sticking up as she did so. Her work clothes had been soaking in the sink all night, and there was no way she could wear them right now. Suddenly, she felt two strong hands on her hips, and her cunt being filled from behind by a massive cock. The shot caused Tylene to let out a yelp in pleasant surprise, and she gripped the sides of the wash basin for balance. Tylene couldn't believe any of the guys were still awake, let alone still up for it, but she looked up into the bathroom mirror and wasn't surprised to find out that it was Steve. He had her completely speared on his enormous prick. "Yeah, you fucking slut! I'm having some more of you before you leave," Steve panted as he began to ruthlessly slam his huge erect cock into Tylene's cunt. He was pumping so hard Tylene thought she was going to get pushed through the wall. Watching in the mirror, she saw her body being physically abused by Steve, and the expression on his face suggested he was giving it his all. Tylene threw her head back and let herself enjoy the ride. "Oh yes! Steve! Fuck me! Yes! Oh! Erg! God! Yes! Fuck my slutty cunt! Oh! Oh! Fuck! Yes!" Tylene was coming again, and Steve didn't let up his frantic pace. Watching the two of them in the mirror, Steve saw himself relentlessly pounding the small, weary frame of Tylene Buck. Her large, ripe tits were jiggling rapidly with each brutal stroke. Tylene moved one of her hands off the basin and down to play with her swollen clit. All the while, Steve never lost his rhythm. "You fucking love it, don't you, you fucking slut?" Steve asked forcefully. "You love being drilled by big fat cocks. It's all you want, isn't it? Isn't it?" Each word being uttered in sync with one of his mighty thrusts. "Oh, fuck yes!" Tylene screamed. "I love it! Fuck me harder! Faster! Oh! Oh! God, yes!" She rocked backwards in time, with Steve's thrusting in a desperate attempt to stuff as much of his dick inside her as possible. Her head fell forward as she came again. "Oh, God! Oh! Yes! Oh, fuck! Oh, yes!" As she climaxed, she flicked her clit with greater speed, and this caused the muscles in her pussy to grip down on Steve's cock. It was the only control she had. She was already extremely tired, but this fucking she was getting from such a mammoth cock was killing her. She was exhausted, but Steve was determined to continue fucking her limp body until he came. Tylene's body was alive with pleasure, but she was physically too drained to act with much enthusiasm. Was all Tylene could manage, her orgasm raising in volume with each thrust, as Steve's cock filled her cunt, time and time again, his balls making a satisfying slapping sound against her healthy, round ass cheeks. "Yeah, you fucking cum slut. You can't get enough." Oh, fuck yes!" Steve hollered as he came. Tylene felt his cock swell, and his hands gripped her pumping hips with greater force as his hot, thick seed flooded into Tylene's battered cunt. Steve continued slamming into Tylene for a while afterwards, to make sure her pussy sucked up every last drop of his cum. "Oh, fuck yes!" Tylene managed one last scream as she felt her well-used snatch filled to the brim with cum. Finally, Steve was spent and collapsed sideways, exhausted, but with a huge smile on his face, his monster erection finally shrinking. That was enough for Tylene. She lay forward onto the basin to catch her breath. Her cunt was dripping with her own juices and Steve's plentiful cum. She closed her eyes and waited for her strength to return, while subconsciously she continued playing with her inflamed clit. She dozed lightly, bent over the sink, and stroking herself to a feeling of contented bliss. Tylene didn't know how long she'd been limp there over the bathroom sink, but when she fully awoke, she decided it was time to leave. Steve was sound asleep in the corner with one hand holding his long, flaccid cock. Without any clothes to wear, she returned to Steve's room and took a large t-shirt that covered most of her body, just leaving her shapely legs exposed. She didn't think he'd miss it, and it would be enough to get her to her car, and then home, where she could get cleaned up properly and changed. She went back to the bathroom to pick up her work gear. Carrying her sopping clothes, Tylene headed down the stairs and noticed the pizza box laying just inside the front door. On top was $12.50, and a note was tucked into the box that read, "Good pizza, great service. Tips in the box." Tylene smiled at that and opened the discarded pizza box. There was a large wad of notes at which Tylene gasped. Walking out the door, she counted the cash. There was easily more than $500 here. On her way to the car, an idea struck her. Hey! This isn't a bad way to make a lot of money. Maybe I'll pack in the pizza delivery thing. Hell, why I'm at it? Why not give up on wrestling? The end. Thank you for listening to episode number 13 of Wrestle Erotica. As always, please make sure to visit our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and various other social media sites to stay updated with our latest news and posts. Please, if you liked the show, please review it in iTunes. This helps get more eyes on it, which will basically just increase the frequency and get the word out so that we can keep making more of these and enjoying them. Another thing that is happening this week is a charity event called Pod Slam. Pod Slam is a charity event, which is a podcast-a-thon, which is taking place in order to raise money for Connor's Cure, which, as many wrestling fans know, is the organization that was started by WWE to help children with cancer, and it's a good cause. And if you look in the information, I will link towards this, and if you feel like making any kind of donation, please do so. And with that being said, please enjoy your week. Thank you.